Welcome everyone to a video on our chapter 6, which talked about allowance for doubtful accounts. So let's go right to the problems. Alright, so in this first one, at December 31st, 2017, Gill Company reported accounts receivable of $238,000 and an allowance for the uncollectible accounts of $600, which had a credit balance. An analysis of accounts receivable suggests that the allowance for doubtful accounts should be 3% of accounts receivable. And the question wants to know the dollar amount of the adjustment to record bad debt expense and what's going to be our net realizable value of the accounts receivable after the adjustment. So before I let you go to try and do the problems, remember that net realizable value is how we value accounts receivable first of all, but it's just going to be accounts receivable minus allowance for doubtful accounts. So with that, I'll let you try and do the problem, and then I will talk about it. All right, so first off, let's figure out what our adjustment is going to be. So what they're doing, so there's two ways to record your allowance for doubtful accounts. There's like the percentage of the accounts receivable / percentage of credit sales method. And then there's also like a chart method, which we're going to do down here. So we're going to cover both ways. So this is actually kind of like the easier one. So in this way, all we do is we take this 3% and we multiply it by this 238,000 to get what our allowance for doubtful account should be after the adjustment. And I'll explain what that means after I do this quickly. So this amount is going to be 7,140. Now this amount is going to be what they want allowance for doubtful account to be at the end of the adjustment. So let's make a quick T account to make this easier. So the problem said that they had a 600 credit in allowance for doubtful accounts. If they didn't have that and it was just zero, then the answer would be 7,140. But we want to get allowance for doubtful accounts to 7,140. So the adjustment is going to be whatever number gets us there. So in this case, it's just going to be 7,140 minus 600. So the adjustment amount is going to be 6,540. So now let's go over why that is and what the transaction is going to look like. So the reason the number that you get from doing this transaction, the 7,140, goes at the end is because that's the number that they don't think they're going to be able to collect in 2018. Because remember, they're doing this at the end of 2017. So if we just put the 7,140 here, where the 6,540 goes, we're actually going to end up with 7,740, which is going to be too much. So that's why we have to, like, the actual adjustment number is whatever gets us to whatever we don't think we're going to collect in the next year. And we figure that out, again, by doing the 238,000 multiplied by the 3%. So now let's look at the adjustment that we're going to use with this number that we got. So doing the allowance method, let's draw our accounting equation quickly. So if you remember from chapter 6, we're going to have, it's going to be a bad debt expense, what's going to be debited. Oh, and this is going to, and remember, expenses are going to decrease shareholders' equity. So bad, I'm just going to write BD, but it's bad debt expense. And this number is going to decrease shareholders' equity. All right, so now our other account, our credit, is going to be allowance for doubtful accounts. What we did in this T account right here. So I'm just going to label it ADA again. And remember, allowance for doubtful accounts is a contra asset, so it's going to be decreasing assets. I know I kind of wrote it so it looks like it's under liabilities, but it's a contra asset, so it's decreasing assets. And it keeps the accounting equation in balance. And if you're focused on the transaction, this is going to be your debit, this is going to be your credit. All right, so now the second question, what would be net realizable value? So again, like what I was talking about before, it's just going to be accounts receivable. So 238,000 minus our new allowance for doubtful accounts number, which is going to be the ending balance. And we should get 230,860. And remember, accounts receivables are valued at net realizable value. All right, so let's move on to our next set of questions. Oh, too far. So for this one, before you do number 1, I would actually recommend doing number 3, right? No, it doesn't matter. Just whatever order you want to go in. So yeah, I'll let you guys have a second to try them, and then I'll talk about them. All right, so number 1, assume at the end of a period, the allowance for doubtful accounts has a debit balance. Does this mean that the estimate from the end of the previous period was overestimated or underestimated? So let's kind of see what's going on here. So allowance for doubtful accounts. So we know at like the beginning of every period, we want it allowance for doubtful account. It's gonna have a credit balance like we had up here, right? So let's just like use the example from before, and we'll start it off with like a 7,140. So like in this example, we're just like continuing this one kinda. This one was from 2017, and they're estimating they won't be able to collect 7,140 in 2018. So now we're setting up the T account for 2018. And now they're saying that at the end of 2018, we're going to have a debit balance of some number. So that means that during 2018, because remember when we write off an allowance for doubtful account, we're going to debit it. So that means like we're going to have more buildup up here on this side of the T account. So we're going to end up with a debit balance. And we're going to have a bunch of numbers over here. So to end up with a debit balance, this number has to be greater than the 7,140. Remember, this is what they think they won't collect for 2018. Well, you heard what I said. What they think they won't collect for 2018 is the 7,140. And then this number right here, which is greater than 7,140, is what they actually don't collect during 2018. So that's why we end up with a debit balance. So they underestimated how much they thought they weren't going to collect. Hopefully that made sense. So number 2, Ninja Incorporated reports the following aging schedule of its accounts receivable with the estimated percent uncollectible. What is the total estimate of uncollectible using the aging method? So this is the other method to estimate allowance for doubtful accounts. So basically what they do is they split up their total accounts receivable into different groups based on how like past due they are. So like if it was due today to 60 days, they figure out, okay, we have 40,000 in that amount, and then they give like a percent with it. So we don't think we can collect 1% of that. So they just like multiply it across. So 40,000 multiplied by 0.01 equals 400. So then 61 to 90 days past due, they don't think they're going to collect 20% of it. Oop. Having some calculator issues. So that's 3,000. So that's for number 2. And then more than 90 days past due, they're like, wow, we don't think we're going to collect a lot of this because these losers just don't want to pay us. So 5,000 times 0.6 is 3,000 again, according to my calculator. And I will finish up 5,000 times 0.6. Yep, I got 3,000. Okay, so I'll explain the rest of this in the next video.